Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack here. Thursday now, the 24th day of July 2025. Some interesting things popped up this afternoon on the European Ensembles, so I thought I would take a look at that as we end the month of July, probably on a quiet note, we could start August busier, and that just makes sense. As we get into August, we would normally expect things to increase in the deep tropics, and now, as the little thumbnail graphic shows, maybe there is an August signal starting to manifest itself. So take a look at that as the main part of today's update. All right, let's get started, shall we? First of all, National Hurricane Center homepage. I want to make it very clear there's nothing outlined out here right now from the Hurricane Center. Just my gigantic oval. That's about it. This is the area we're watching, and it's an area of disturbed weather sitting over the northern Gulf. Broad area of low pressure. And that is the key here. It is broad, it's not consolidating. But, of course, regardless of development and tropical cyclone formation, locally heavy rainfall possible for portions of the northern Gulf Coast through this weekend. And as I talked about yesterday, this energy will make its way across Louisiana and then into Texas. And then eventually that energy is going to become part of the monsoonal flow on the backside of a big high off the map over here into the desert southwest. I'll talk more about that on Monday. But things are generally quiet right now, but they could be changing, as we'll look at over the next few tabs up here as part of today's update. So here is our disturbance over the northern Gulf. And again, it's broad and not consolidating, so we don't have to worry about it too much. But this could bring some very heavy rain depending on where you are. You got some big cities in here, Houston and that area. Lake Charles, Louisiana, and here. Most of the energy has now gone past the New Orleans area. In fact, I can show you on our radar scope here, and this is what it looks like passing west of New Orleans for the time being. New Iberia points south and west from there towards Vermilion Bay, Sycamore Point down there. You could get some, probably getting it right now, or just were, as I'm recording this, really heavy rain, but you see there's no signs of any circulation really sitting out here. Certainly nothing tightening up, and so we don't have to worry about anything in terms of wind or surge or anything like that. But if you have plans to travel across this corridor, you know that trek across the Atchafalaya on I-10 there can be bad on a good day. You throw in these very heavy rain showers and thunderstorms, torrential rain at that, and that could make it even worse. But not a bad setup overall, considering how warm those Gulf temperatures are. We're just not seeing this come together. Now look, if we move the satellite view to the east a little bit, quite a bit actually, a few things I want to point out. This is the leftovers of what was 94L, not coming together either. And then other tropical disturbances, and here as the sun is now setting across the eastern portions of the Atlantic. Look at this feature here, trying to curl up. The GFS operational in some of the ensembles, depending on which run you look at, does try to make something more of this, but some clues all around, very dry, stable air all throughout this area that will get ingested into this. And what's interesting, anytime you get deep thunderstorms that try to develop with that much Saharan air layer around, think about breathing in nasty air. You go take a deep breath and something, dust in the air or whatever it is, something foul smelling, and you breathe that in. It's not good for you, right? And the same thing with these thunderstorms in the deep tropics around a tropical wave in this case. When they try to ingest that air, we call that the inflow or the low-level convergence. When that happens, you're pulling in dry air from around, and it's kind of self-destructing, right? It's not helpful because all that dry air is around. So anytime you get these thunderstorms that go up, they bring in that dry air, and then they pretty abruptly collapse. So until this dry air layer mixes out, and that's probably going to happen later into the season, but as I'm going to show you on some of the Euro signal here, the ensembles especially, today, this certainly could change tomorrow. Maybe we're going to start to change that pattern as we get into early August, and part of that is because of what we call a Kelvin wave, and that's a simple way to put it. It's like a shot of Red Bull. I've used that expression many times over the last several years. That kind of passes through the basin over a 3 to 4 day period. It's less long in terms of its duration hanging around than a broader Madden-Julian oscillation, which all are just fancy ways of saying, hey, a more favorable window is opening. We might see that as we end the month of July and get into early August. Very simply put, a short window of favorability might open where we would have less of all of these negative influences out here, and then these tropical waves, which are robust, there's no question about that, they could start taking advantage of that better environment more and more. And you can see those tropical waves on the vorticity signature. By the way, the energy over the Gulf, definitely there, certainly much more consolidated than it was yesterday, but it still would have a long way to go, right? It's pretty oblong overall, not concentrated too much, but yesterday was all strung out like that. Now it is a little bit more concentrated over the Gulf for what it's worth, but it'll run out of time and it'll move inland, and then all this energy right here, again, will make its way towards the desert southwest around the backside of this big high. It's going to be toasty here in my hometown of Wilmington over the next few days, just for what it's worth. Highs near 100, and on that southwesterly side of the high with the southeasterly favored flow, southeasterly flow, that is favorable for this to get entrained to the monsoonal pattern, which I should just wait and talk about that more on Monday. Back to the tropics, though, these are some of these pieces of energy that are sitting out here. That's at a pretty low latitude. Some of the X94L energy in here, perhaps. But that's what we're going to be looking for over the coming days and weeks. And if it wasn't for all of this very potent Saharan air layer sitting about, then these systems would have a lot better opportunity to get going. So that's the big culprit right now, holding back the hurricane season, is this stable blanket of air, the Saharan air layer. And I want to make it very clear, come back on again, the expression, talk to you, not at you. It is not the dust. The dust is a symptom. It's a part of, if we didn't have dust over the Sahara, let's just say it was just like limestone, right? No dust, or granite or something, which would be weird, but just bear with me. It's not the dust. If there was no dust and no Sahara, then you would still have this warm air mass coming out in the mid-levels, and you just wouldn't be able to see it as prevalently on visible satellite imagery. You see, that's the key. We think it's the dust. It's not the dust itself. The dust just gets kicked up in this African easterly jet, whisked into, I don't know, about 700 millibars down to about 900 millibars or so, maybe. And it's a blanket, it's a layer, the Saharan air layer, but it is the warm air, dry warm air over warm moist air, and that creates a cap. You don't have instability. So it's not the dust. I see people say, oh, the dust is choking everything off. The dust is a byproduct. It is something you can see, but it is not necessarily. Now look, if you had a whole bunch of it, where it just completely blocks out the sky, and it gets pretty thick out there, but by and large, just telling you, it's not the dust. It is the Saharan air layer itself, this warm air over warm air, that prevents the instability from being enough for these thunderstorms to take off. You need cold air over the warm moist air so that it can be nice and buoyant and rise and create thunderstorms, right? And that is what the Euro is starting to sense. This is the old Weather Nerd site. I'm going to put this into motion. This is the 12Z Ensemble. And as we get towards the end of the month, we're going to let this just run a few times here. We'll speed it up. Towards the end of the month, the activity starts to pick up. There we go. There's a 30th, 31st, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So yeah, on out into the future, more of these robust tropical waves would be coming off, and then the Euro is picking up on one now over Africa somewhere, and it is sensing this more favorable environment. That's a lot of members trying to develop that next feature that's yet to come off. We got a ways to watch this, and to be perfectly clear here, I want to make sure I am transparent about it. The 0Z run tonight and the 12Z run tomorrow of the Ensembles. Remember, the Ensembles are important because it's not just one model. It is, like I've said before, it's like the rest of the orchestra versus just the conductor or just the violinist or the lead trumpet guy or whatever, right? It is the Ensembles. When you get a signal like this, the Ensembles at least tell you, we might want to watch that. That being said, this ensemble group from the Euro here could easily just drop it tomorrow, 12 hours from now, whatever, right? I know that. And we all should know that. But I thought this was interesting. It's an interesting signal as we get into the first part of August, maybe heralding in the start of a more busy time as we turn to the 8th month of the year. And, the calendar over to August, what is that? The 3rd month, June, July, August of the, I had to count, not going to lie, of the hurricane season, right? And so we'll watch and see. But that is an impressive signal for those of you that have been tracking this long enough. If you know, you know. When you see something like that, it is at least worth mentioning, and we'll stay on top of it, all right? Pretty quick update for you because there's just not much else to talk about, but we covered it. We covered what's there. So let's do this again tomorrow about the same time, and we shall see if this signal is still there. If it's amplified even more, we'll be a day further along in time. So these tracks will be a little bit more west and west-northwest if they're still going to exist. It'll be an interesting case study. How well is the Euro and its ensembles doing with this signal as we approach August? All right? So let's do it again tomorrow afternoon, shall we? That being said, I will bid you a great rest of your Thursday. Thanks as always for tuning in from all of us at HurricaneTrack. Good to have you with me. I'm Mark Sudduth. I'll see you again tomorrow.